Hi and welcome back to Garden Ninja for the June update. The garden is in full swing and I've got absolutely loads of hints and tips to show you this month here at Garden Ninja HQ. So grab your sun cream and a cold can of something fizzy and let's get cracking. If you've not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you hit the red subscribe button below, where you'll get access to over 120 garden design hints, tips and hacks. And best of all, it's free, so subscribe today. Now we've got a few gaps in the exploding atom garden, and that's because we had a really severe winter and some of the plants that should have survived didn't. It was really wet, it was cold, but that's part of the gardening process. You know, we apply best means and methods, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Now you might not be able to see, but there is a bit of a gap here in the middle of the border, which I'm not keen on. Because if you followed my guides as to how to plant up a border like this, you know that we work in layers. So I've got a really interesting specimen that I'm going to put in the middle here that's going to not only bring a bit of height to this section of the garden, but also a real late summer pizzazz. So let's go and take a look. So in this gap in the garden, I've planted a eupatorium. Now these plants get humongous, and I'm just going to point it out now. I've put it in here, right in the centre of the border, because it's going to get to about 2.5 metres in a couple of years. Now eupatorium love damp conditions. They're kind of a bit of a riverside or quasi bog plant. Now this bed gets completely flooded in the winter, and no matter what I do to it, it just always stays damp. And in the very centre, there's a bit of a clay vein, so it's a prime position for this kind of plant. Now it's not a plant for every garden because it does get big, but it is an indicator of choosing the right plant for the right place, and it's really going to bulk up. Everything else is looking lovely, and now it's just a case of watering it in and letting it do its thing. Check. So this month I've also been tending to some shrubs, in particular down the shady driveway. Now when we moved here, there were a number of privets and holly shrubs that have been clipped into these kind of what I call blobs. And it's a common thing that happens with shrubs, is that over time people just clip them closer and closer, and they end up as these almost like weird egg shapes that neither look natural nor particularly pleasing. So for the past couple of years I've been experimenting in trying to free up the shrubs, and I'm going to show you that on 2 of them now. And what I would say is, from both a horticultural perspective and a design perspective, if you've got any blobs in your garden, just relax the kind of clipping and trimming that you do to allow that shrub to look more natural, because it will be far more pleasing for you, for wildlife and for the shrub, rather than this really tightly clipped awkward egg shape. And you'll see these egg shapes usually around car parks or in people's gardens where they just go too hard with the pruning, and in this motion they kind of end up with this weird elliptical egg. But I'm going to show you a few now, and you can kind of see how I've turned them back into more of a circular, almost like globe shape. So here's one example, and 2 years ago it was this weird elliptical shape, and now with a little bit of relaxed pruning it's becoming more round and circular. And the reason why I prefer that is it's more definite. This egg shape is kind of neither here nor there, but when you clip something into either like a sphere like this, or you let it go a little bit shaggy, it just starts to open up and feel more relaxed, and it will look far nicer. I mean, after all, this is just common privet, so it's nothing super special, but now they've got form. And I tend to leave some of this fresh growth, so it's got that sort of slightly shaggy appearance. But let's check out a much bigger specimen. Now this behind me is probably my favourite example. Again, this was a really tightly clipped blob before. And what I've done over the past 18 months to 2 years is just to relax it. So it's a lot softer. I don't clip it as harsh as it would have been done before. What you'll notice is that even this privet now is starting to flower. So you're going to get that flower, you've got the softness, and this overall shape now is much more intentional. It's big, it's circular, it's kind of out there saying, I'm here, I'm unapologetic, and I just think it looks gorgeous. Now another example is this grey dogwood here. A few years ago it was just this mass of green growth, but when I looked at it I could see that there were a few different stems in there. So what I've done over the past couple of years is just clip off all the growth off the bottom stems. What it's done is allowed me to kind of create this mini multi-stem tree look. So if you've got a really big overgrown shrub in your garden, you don't know what to do, rather than just remove it, start to clip away at it and see what the structure's like inside. Because if you've got lots of thick, strong multi-stems, you could create almost like a multi-stem tree. But rather than dig it out, always try and work with it. Now the meadow behind me over the hedge is looking absolutely insane at the moment. But if you want to take a closer look, make sure you check out the wildlife gardening series where I focus in on that in much more detail. But you won't be disappointed, so check that one out. So I've also got some really exciting news to share with you today. I know that I said I wasn't going to be growing anything this year because I basically wanted a year off, work was getting busy and I didn't feel like I could commit to growing on all these plants. However, you'll see behind me that there are about 25 yellow courgettes all growing away happily. And that's because I've been asked to do a show garden at the RHS at Tatton here in the UK, and the show garden is for the BBC and it's to represent community gardens here in the northwest of England. So I've got my plants on order, but I've also been growing a few of my own. Now if you want to see more on that garden and the design and all the different plants and components, make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be doing a specific video on it. So I'm going to give you a quick sneak peek in here and then you can try and work out in your heads exactly what I'm up to and maybe what the final design looks like. So behind me is a really good example with these alchemillas of editing your garden throughout the season. So they've been in flower now for what feels like 6 or 7 weeks. They're just prolific. However, I'm not sure whether it's because of the wet winter or the hot early spring. They've grown humongous. They look like, well they did, they looked like domes, almost like topiary shrubs, but the rain has battered them because they've had a bit of a downpour. And some of the wind, so they're looking a bit straggly. So what I'm going to do is prune these back by at least half. And you may think, oh, you're getting rid of all the flowers, but they've been in flower for like 6 or 7 weeks. They're super bulletproof, these plants, but they're also starting to spray out and cover other herbaceous plants in the garden. They're on the lawn, it makes it difficult to mow, so it's just about using common sense to edit the garden as you go along. I can recycle all of the clippings, they're going to come back next year. If I'm lucky, they may even give me a second flower, I'm not sure. But let's see, let's give it a go. So I'm going to grab my snips and start cutting them back. So here we have a good example of what I call the midsummer flop. Now, these alchemilla mollis have grown humongous this year. They've been like mini domes, but we're trying to mow the lawn, they're in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut back a lot of this, probably to about here. Now they will regenerate some leaves, they probably won't flower again. But oh, look. You can see why they're called alchemilla there, look at that, alchemy, beautiful. But yeah, I'm going to cut these back because they're just getting in the way, they're going to get mowed over. But that's part of garden design really, and garden planning. Just nip things back when you need to. So here we go. This is kind of like the end product. So I've left a few leaves on that aren't in the way, but I've given it a good chop back, and lo and behold, this crocosmia was getting swamped. So actually, if I hadn't done that tidy up, then these wouldn't have flowered, they'd have probably just died back due to lack of sun. So it's important when you are gardening, there's one over there as well, that you kind of edit things. Could have staked it, but it was getting really big. It's going to come back year after year because alchemilla are totally bulletproof. So So that brings us neatly to the end of the June garden tour. If you've liked this video, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking the red button below and click the bell for notifications. And make sure you check out the rest of my channel where there are hundreds of garden design, hints, tips and hacks to help you make your garden awesome. I've been Garden Ninja, happy gardening.